What's up, everybody? Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And sorry I missed y'all for the last couple of days. I was actually at the hospital greeting my firstborn son into this world. He's gonna be a pro freaking gamer before you know it. All joking aside, we're gonna be breaking down an updated economy guide, giving you all the tips and tricks on how to dominate this patch and this act, because there's a lot of mistakes that people are making, and there's a lot of ways that you can dominate the enemy just before you even start playing. So let's break it all down. But go to the GameLeap website if you want in-depth tips and tricks, VODs, and content that you won't find anywhere else. You got to go check it out right now on the GameLeap website. But without further ado, let's jump to the video. Now, let's take this round at a time, starting off with the round that you have to nail 100% because it can lead to a lot of economic snowball, and it's that pistol round. Now, there's a lot of ways to play that first round, and we gotta talk about that classic nerf that came a little while back. While the classic is definitely weaker than it was before as far as jumping and running is concerned, the gun is still really freaking good as long as you're not taking very long-range engagements, and if you're super close up, you can still get crazy right-click kills. So honestly, the gun is still very good in general for economy. Now, there's two ways to go about using the classic pistol. There's the classic plus armor, which is going to make you a little bit more resilient, survival against like ghost pistol headshots, for instance. And you're gonna be more resilient against certain abilities like shock darts and things like that. That being said, in the current state when chamber is in every single freaking game and some people are still force buying sheriffs, in general, armor is less reliable than it was before. You can still get completely rolled by some of these weaponry, although being more survivable to body shots is still pretty decent. I just think in general, armor with classic is not as good as it once was, where people were only using that ghost pistol and you could survive a headshot no matter what. Now, also, classic plus abilities is going to be very character based, and that's why there isn't one catch-all pistol that you should be using right now in the first pistol round, because it's really going to depend on your character. Some characters are really going to want every single freaking ability. They're going to want all of it, and they're just going to want to have a classic with no armor, and it really depends on whether or not your characters have abilities that are going to help your team engage and help the team fight overall. A character like Skye is going to be far better having as many abilities as possible rather than buying things that are going to make her individually more impactful, because her abilities allow her team to engage much better, have cleaner executes, and allow her team to get much more value. And that is just way more powerful than a little bit more survivability that an enemy could use like one shock dart and blow away your armor, or you're just a little bit more lethal when your abilities make you a lot more lethal. Now, of course, we do got to talk about the ghost pistol. The ghost pistol is probably the go-to weapon right now. It's very effective in that pistol round. It's very good at poking through smokes without getting seen. You're going to be able to spam a lot more from longer ranges, but not every character should be using a ghost pistol. A lot of times, if you have abilities that take precedent, then the ghost pistol might not be right for you. Also, the ghost pistol is very good, but sometimes very awkward, because that 500 credits really doesn't line up with every single character. There are characters that if they would have just got armor, they're going to be able to get 2 abilities as opposed to 1. Like, let's take Jett as a classic example. Ha, pun intended. Okay, all right. Smash that dislike button if you didn't like that pun. Psych! I can't see it anymore. Okay, all right. Enough. Going back to the video, the fact that if you buy a classic plus armor on Jett, you're going to be able to buy an updraft plus a smoke, as opposed to if you buy a ghost, you can only buy 1. And while it's your call, I still think the ghost is probably better on Jett. It's not entirely cookie cutter, and it's going to be dependent on the point you're holding, what character you're playing, and how your abilities line up. But in general, Ghost is going to edge out armor unless your abilities fall very wacky when buying that Ghost or doesn't fit perfectly with your economy of your abilities and your weaponry. And the Frenzy is very similar. Now, the Frenzy is a more niche weapon than the Ghost because it's not as useful in multiple scenarios. It's really good for playing with your team, refragging, or if you have a movement ability to engage with your team. That is really good. Like using a Frenzy on a character like Reyna, it's almost better to follow up your initiator. If you have a Jett or a Phoenix, you're almost baiting them a little bit, but you're really going in to retrade them, because if you get a kill with the Frenzy, you get full healed with shield. Now you're like an unstoppable force, but it's kind of hard for you to get into combat with that Frenzy. And if you're Jett, you have the dash that you can use a little bit more aggressively, but I'm not entirely sure that that's better than using it with the Ghost defensively. And there's characters like Raze that could use a blast pack. but then you have to try to fit your economy with the frenzy. You can't buy a very powerful boom bot. So there's a lot of question marks involved with the frenzy. I think in general, it's probably not going to be the best gun to buy, but there are going to be some situations where you get tons of free value. And in some of the lower ranks, I think frenzy is something that you can do to play with an ally or trade off of them that is going to get you guaranteed value. And that's always a good thing, where it doesn't matter how good your aim is that day, you're going to be getting kills no matter what with that frenzy, especially on defense, depending on where you're holding. Now, last up is definitely the sheriff. Now, the sheriff is actually uniquely powerful in that pistol round because it's kind of like the great decider, right? No matter what, if people are wearing freaking light armor or no armor or whatever, we got the sheriff in your hands, you're gonna freaking roll him if you hit that headshot. Now, from a high level looking down, it doesn't really make sense to use the sheriff when you have coordination of like a pro team, but in ranked, if you're a Deagle demon, then you can get a lot of value on that sheriff. However, you should only be using that sheriff on pistol round if you have a free ability that is very powerful. What I mean by that is you need to still have some value in the ability slot without the sheriff involved. So characters that this would include is a character like Sage that has a heal, a character like Killjoy that has a turret, or even a character like Jet that has a dash. These characters have something very powerful innate to them that make it so the sheriff is really good to use and really allows you to either like heal yourself if you take chip damage, or peek an angle with that turret, or dash away if you miss your sheriff shots. And on top of that, the sheriff is gonna play a lot better on maps where it's hard to get into effective range. So a great example of this is Breeze. Sheriff's amazing when taking that A side on attack on Breeze because it's really long sight lines. You get a Viper to cut the sight. Having a sheriff allows you to really challenge from far away. You're not really afraid of classics at all. And even ghosts, you can just, you know, tap enemies and kill them. So it's gonna be map dependent, character dependent, and it is an option on some of these rounds, but it's not gonna be as consistent as just using something like the Ghost or even the Classic Plus Armor. But the next thing that we're gonna talk about is the eco rounds. I'm gonna talk about eco rounds if you win that pistol round, and then also eco rounds if you lose that pistol round, and then what happens after the fact. So first off, eco rounds if you win. You won that pistol round, what should you do in the next round? Well, almost always, and statistics have shown us through pro play and just through analyzing ranked play as well, that teams that force on that 1 second round can help snowball an economic advantage throughout the game. So it's very common, especially the lower in rank you get, you'll see a lot of times where people will buy like a sheriff or a ghost on that pistol round. They'll win it and they'll be like, all right, I'm just gonna buy full armor with this ghost pistol, right? Now, the reason that this can be really bad is you give the enemy a chance of actually destroying your team or winning that second round, where from a numbers advantage, they should never be able to win. Because if y'all all buy armor plus specters, the enemy, even if they force, which would destroy their economy if they lose, they're still at a huge disadvantage, and most likely they won't even force, which means that you get to get another 3,000 credits for free. You get to bring a gun into the next round that is still serviceable up against rifles, and you get to further stack eco for free. That means that one pistol round turns into 2 free rounds. But if you get to the point where like 2 of your teammates are using sheriffs and one of them is just using a marshal with no armor, and no one's buying a gun, or someone's buying a gun with no armor, or whatever the case may be, now there's a big chance that you could lose that round. Not only lose it, but hurt your economy for many future rounds, because some of your teammates would buy, some of your teammates won't, and then you're all on the wrong page, and then some teammates buy on that third round when the rest of them bought and lost, so now they have to save. It's just like a freaking mess, right? So in general, in that eco round, doesn't matter what you bought in that first round, buy guns, buy up, and buy armor if you can, especially if you're using something like a Spectre, because you really don't want to die and lose your weapon. Now, there is a caveat to this, and it's light plus rifle. This is actually one of the best of both worlds because you get to upgrade your armor in the third round, and you get to keep that rifle, and you're going to be really well off into the future rounds, and you could stack eco. Now, there is a risk here because you're rocking light armor, right? And you could die to enemies if they force up, or if you're caught lacking, you could give a rifle to an enemy. And that's why if you do buy light plus rifle, it's very important to play your life. Play these long sight lines, play to fight enemies that you are far outside their effective range, and make sure to not go lurking or flanking or whatever the case may be and lose that rifle and give it to an enemy. Now, if your entire team buys Spectres, but you give one rifle to the enemy team, your team could lose. Your team could lose straight up because now they're at a weapon disadvantage. So it's very important that you are very diligent if you buy that rifle. Now, here's the thing. There is one character and one character only that could actually save on an eco round win. I just said that everyone should buy, but there's one character that might not need to buy, and that's Jet. And there's a reason for that. The reason is if you're on defense and you're saving for an operator. If every single member on your team buys a Spectre plus armor, or they buy a rifle plus light, and you as a Jet, you know, you save, you're ecoing, you're doing whatever you can to save that money because you want to buy an operator in that third round, that is fine because that's a way to snowball even further. Now, it's a little bit risky, right? Because there's one less gun on your side, and if your team gets wiped out, you don't have a gun, it's pretty bad because maybe if you would have had a gun, you would have won that round. And if you lose that second round, you're still not going to be able to buy an op because you're too poor and your team's going to be poor. It's not even going to be worth it to buy an op. But every big risk deserves an equal reward. And we just said that it is a risk to not buy with your team. It's a huge risk, but the reward is even on that third round, when the enemies are buying rifles, you could still win it again. Even though part of your team have Spectres that they're carrying over and you have an operator, you could still win because you're sniping and getting picks on these rifle users. And you could actually super imagine the potential here. Like you're winning that first pistol round, then the second round, most of your team buys and you win that for free. And then the third round, you get a pick or two with the operator and you win that round. And then the fourth round, the enemy team is broke, so you win that round. And yeah, you just won 4 rounds off of 1 round, right? That's just crazy. So that's the big potential here. But in general, it's way better to 100% secure that second round. And it's way better for your team to full buy because even if one of you save and you buy that rifle for that third round, it can not only just completely screw your economy if you die and lose that round, but one of you having a rifle up against an entire team that has a rifle is not enough of an impact changer, right? An operator is different. An operator could get picks even up against them, but to save into a rifle at parity with such high risk is just not worth it. The next up, we gotta talk about the eco round if you lose. So let's say you play that pistol round and you got smoked by 10s, right? He just shot you, you know, rolled and smoked, and now you're in that second round and you just lost that first. Now, a lot of people want to force, right? And it's honestly gonna depend a lot on momentum. Sometimes it is correct to force, and it's really where you and your team are losing by a pretty large margin and you need some free round wins and some momentum to shift. That is pretty much the only situation that you should ever force. Most of the time, forcing is going to be a huge mistake. And here's the reason why. If the enemy team buys properly, which that means they're gonna buy full armor and Spectres or light plus rifle, even if you force, you're gonna be at an economic disadvantage to them. So you're putting yourself at a disadvantage even if you're forcing. And if the enemy team win and you forced, you're not gonna be able to buy rifles the next round. So you actually screw yourself out of potentially multiple rounds in a row and set your economy to very poorly for the rest of the game. And all of that for just basically the only value that you're getting is maybe putting the enemy off guard. But this is only gonna work against enemies that are caught off guard and enemies that are not playing correctly. Because remember, on paper, you're still at a disadvantage to them. What you should actually be trying to do on eco is getting as many kills as possible to 1, steal their weaponry and potentially clutch up the round, or 2, make it so the enemy basically loses all their eco weapons. Because what you don't want to have happen is in that gun round, that third round, you don't want the enemy to be able to bonus into all these Spectres or even rifles plus light, right? That's not what you want at all, because then you could maybe lose that third rifle round. But if you like kill a whole bunch of them, they have 2 choices. They could buy, and if they lose, they don't get to buy for that 4th round, or they can save and make it so that they could definitely buy in the next round, but you have a much better shot up against them in the round that you're buying rifles because they're gonna have worse shit. So either way, things are gonna be better off for you the more kills you could get. And that's really the goal oftentimes in eco. Of course, there's the chance that you clutch it up, but really you're trying to inflict as much damage as possible. And that's why it's typically good to invest a certain amount of abilities. Buy the abilities that you have that have a lot of impact and try to get a lot of refrag kills with your team because, you know, using a flash and 2 people swinging someone with a rifle, you're still gonna be able to kill them. Even if that rifle user turns on it and kills one of you, you're probably gonna be able to kill him and get that upgrade to that rifle where you can go and try to get more kills or even save that rifle and take some of their economy away. Now, if you do have some extra credits, guns that you can buy are weapons like a sheriff. That's a pretty fine weapon to buy. Something that has the capability of getting 1-taps. Marshal's probably fine depending on your aim with it and your character. Characters that have a get out ability like Jet and Chamber are gonna be a little bit better, though Chamber can always just buy his freaking Guardian on an ability. And then a weapon like a Shorty can be good on defense to catch the enemies off guard, even though I think it's a little bit better when enemies have rifles. Now, I know that this was kind of complicated, but here's the ultimate goal that you should be thinking about when you're gonna buy or save or not save or whatever. if you can't get gun advantage, trade a round to get gun parity. This is the easy way to kind of think about economy, because sometimes it gets so complicated where you have to think many rounds in advance, but it's definitely something that people need to nail, because if you nail economy down, you're really getting between, like, you know, 3 to 6 rounds for free potentially in a game. And a lot of games that would have been wins become losses because of economic laziness. So definitely, this is a very important guide. Share it with a buddy who doesn't know simple math. But if you enjoyed the video, go to the GameLeap website right now for in-depth tips, tricks, VOD reviews. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I missed y'all guys, honestly. I've been making daily content for so long. It feels weird not to make it, but yeah, so, yeah, thank y'all. Anyways, I love your faces, and I'll see you next time.